What's going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and you know what? I just realized that my fan is on, and I shouldn't do that because you may be hearing a vortex of wind above the camera. And welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, where I give you maximum truth and minimum bullshit regarding my personal experiences with today's newest retail games. And this is going to be a very important one. This is going to be one that I know a lot of people are going to want to tune into. People have been asking me all week about this game. They've been on the fence about it. This is a game that literally days, only mere days before its release, many mainstream outlets, such as GameSpot in particular, reviewed the game and said that it wasn't very good. And it's laughable because if you read their review, they do make some points that, of course, if the game wasn't out, you wouldn't know whether to believe them or not. But then they also reference the fact that this game is not like its predecessors, and the predecessors, they feel they have some kind of nostalgic connection to, and therefore this game veered too much from the original formula, and that it's not good because of that. They don't actually state major flaws in the game. They don't actually say that the game is not enough content or that the controls don't work. They just basically say that they don't like this style of game, and they gave the game a 45 out of 100, okay? Completely irresponsible, completely the opposite of what you should do when you're making an objective review that's supposed to be put out there to the public and that thousands of people are going to base their purchasing choices off of, okay? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to review Resident Evil 6. Okay, and as you can see, I have the Archives edition, which is nice, fancy cover. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my personal experiences with the game, and what I mean in that case is I did a full two-player co-op playthrough of the 3 main campaigns in the game with John Rambo, and then I did a single-player playthrough of the 4th unlockable campaign of Ada Wong because it is only single-player. I'm going to explain my experiences, and then this is where really I think my perspective and my ability to review games the way that I do is unique, because I have a girlfriend who's also a hardcore gamer. She played Resident Evil 6 solo without the co-op aspect, and she revealed to me many things that anyone who's going to play this game by themselves absolutely need to know in order to enjoy the experience. And I'm going to try to help you with that stuff so that if you do want to play the game single player, your experience is better. But I'm going to do what I've done with a couple other games. I'm going to review the game, my personal score from my playthrough, my experience of how I played it, and then really how I feel other people would appreciate the game if they're only going to play the game by themselves, okay? Alright, so let's get started. Resident Evil 6 takes place in late 2012, early 2013. Features 3 main campaigns. One campaign follows Jake Mueller, who ends up actually being revealed as the son of Albert Wesker, and Sherry Birkin, who makes her first return role since Resident Evil 2. She's now all grown up. They're one team of 2. Then there's another co-op campaign starring Chris Redfield and his new partner, Piers, I don't even remember what his last name, it doesn't matter. But yeah, and then there's a third co-op campaign starring Leon Kennedy and a new character, Helena, okay? And I'm not going to reveal too much about the plot. I don't need to. I don't want to spoil it. I think a lot of people have already watched the demo or played the demo, and they kind of get the gist of what's going on. Basically, there are bioterror attacks going on throughout the world. You've got the BSAA, which is the organization that Chris works for, who are trying to basically stop these bioterror attacks, destroy the creatures that are released, save survivors. You've got kind of almost a murder mystery with Leon Kennedy, where somehow the president was turned into a zombie and he was forced to kill the president, and now he's trying to find out what happened, who caused this attack on the U.S. soil. And then at the same time, you've got this campaign going on with Jake and Sherry, where Jake is a mercenary, a gun for hire basically, doesn't know he's the son of Albert Wesker. Sherry Birkin finds him and tells him, listen, your blood is the key to creating a vaccine for all these bioterror attacks going on throughout the world. And during the course of this game, these campaigns intersect at multiple times. There will be times when certain groups will meet up with other groups during different chapters and different things. Even doing some really cool co-op with boss fights. Yes, there's actually big boss fights where these groups of 2 meet, and so you have maybe 4 people against 1 boss and such. And that's a really neat feature. Now, you have the ability to play these campaigns either single player, where you'll pick one of the characters and then the other character will be controlled by the computer's AI, or multiplayer, which I did with John Rambo, where each of you control a character and you go on helping each other out, okay? The gameplay is extremely similar to Resident Evil 5. You're going to be running and gunning. Yes, you can move while you aim and shoot. They even adapted it even further for Resident Evil 6. Now, you can actually do lunges left or right to dodge. When you get knocked on your ass in this game, you can either back up or move forward on the ground and still aim and shoot. You can actually roll to the side to dodge, so if you're downed and an enemy comes after you, you can roll out of the way. There's a mechanic now where if you lose all of your health, there's a bar on the screen that begins to fill up, and your goal is to aim and shoot and take out enemies while this bar fills up. And if the bar fills up completely, you actually revive yourself. You'll have no life, no health, but you'll be able to get up and continue the fight. This is way different from the old Resident Evils where you were always reliant on, you know, not ever getting downed, or in the last one you needed your partner to revive you. In this game you can actually do it yourself if you get stuck. But yeah, there's still the, you can revive your partner if they get downed mechanic. You're still going to find healing items that if you use them right next to your partner, you're going to heal your partner. Herbs are in the game, and this time you can combine them. So there's green herbs and red herbs, and if you convert the red and the green, it actually becomes a way more potent healing item. You know, you're going to have multiple guns. It's just similar to Resident Evil 5. There's not that much that they've changed outside of the revival system, the maneuverability. Like I said, you could roll around and dodge and stuff, and also, the upgrade system. There's a new upgrade system in this game that is completely new to the series, and what this is as you're playing the game, you're going to earn points. There's going to be these chess pieces that appear when you either find them through looting or you kill tougher monsters, and when you get these, you accumulate skill points. In between chapters, you have the ability to go to a menu and pick out, it's basically like almost perks in like a Call of Duty system, where you can buy things that will accentuate your character, whether it's more damage with guns, more damage with your melee attacks, be able to find more items, be able to get more ammo. When you pick up a box of ammo, you get like double the amount of ammo that was in that box to begin with. Those kind of perks. And really, those perks can determine your gameplay style and also the ease of going through the game, and let me explain why. One of the major complaints when these reviewers did pre-release copies of this game is that they said there wasn't enough ammo in the game. They were constantly running into parts where they didn't have ammo and they couldn't do anything. They had to rely on their AI partner to do everything for them. Complete bullshit, because if these reviewers actually took the time to learn the new system, one of the first skills that you should buy playing this game is the increased item drops. And what ends up happening if you buy that skill and equip it, almost every single enemy you kill will either drop skill points or ammo. I almost never, probably maybe 1 or 2 times ever throughout the entire cooperative campaign, did I ever find myself with no ammo and had to rely on my co-op partner John Rambo to play for a little bit till I found more ammo. In addition to this, in the Ada Wong campaign where it's single player, I never had this problem. I was never out of ammo. In fact, if anything, more often than not, during my experience of the story of this game, I had too much ammo. I had overabundance. My inventory was full and I had to drop items. So that is a completely invalid complaint if you get the increased item drop skill. However, we are going to talk a little bit about a situation where it could happen, and maybe this is what happened to some of the reviewers, okay? So you got this new skill system. Really cool, really fun to be able to level your stuff up. By the end of the game, I had firearms maxed out, which they were doing basically 1.5 damage, you know? It was an increase of 50% damage. And I had melee attacks were increased by like 25%, and I was just all decked out by the end of this game, and I was killing monsters with only a few bullets, which is really cool. Another thing that they did improve is the melee combat. The melee combat now has a system where you can hit 1 or 2 times, and then there's a third attack that will either kill the opponent or down them, and then when they're on the ground you can repeatedly stomp them until they die. There's also a new running attack where you run and you either do a shoulder rush or like a fancy jump kick, and that'll usually push back or knock down any enemies that you're fighting. There's also a completely new mechanic that's the running slide. You run and you slide, almost like I call it a Pete Townsend slide, because he is a famous rock and roll artist. And, you know, he always was famous for doing these crazy knee slides. Well, it's not necessarily a knee slide, but you slide almost like you're trying to steal a base in a baseball. And you have the ability to actually slide and shoot. So an enemy might be coming at you, run, slide, and shoot, and you might get to him or kill him. And actually, in some cases, you use this to dodge certain things like spinning blade traps and such within the game. So, lots of new stuff in this game that makes it a lot more action-y, a lot more maneuverable. You don't necessarily feel like you're getting stuck in certain places like you maybe did in Resident Evil 5, okay? Now, the 3 campaigns can vary greatly. And what I mean by that is that the overall tone and style of the campaigns can differ because these different groups are actually fighting different monsters. Chris Redfield's campaign is very action-oriented. It almost feels like a horror-style Gears of War. It's not an alien plotline now, but it's like a zombie monster mutation storyline. It almost feels like that, and the game does have a cover system that you can use. It's not the best, it's definitely not as refined as Gears of War, but it does have a system that you'll be using in that campaign a lot. Jake's campaign is more of a combination of, there's a lot of action, but at certain times there's puzzle solving, at certain times there's mini-games. There's actually a couple sequences where he's riding a snowmobile, where he's actually driving on a jet bike. So there's different things going on in his campaign that kind of make it a lot of variety. Leon's campaign is a lot more straightforward and a lot more similar to the older style Resident Evil games, especially Resident Evil 4, where it's a little bit more creepy. You're actually fighting traditional zombies in his campaign. That's right, the original zombies make a return in this game. It's not these mutated freaks, it's just regular zombies coming out, humanoid zombies. And for a lot of his campaign, it has that vibe, almost like you feel like you're playing the original Resident Evil games in a modern setting. No, there's no more tank controls, there's no more shitty camera angles, and yeah, you have plentiful ammo, but you're still in a city that's been completely overrun by zombies. You're trying to find a way to escape and find out what happened, just like Resident Evil 2, and it really feels like a throwback to that kind of gameplay. So there's a little bit of something for everyone in Resident Evil 6, okay? The campaigns themselves consist of 5 chapters each, and these chapters can range from anywhere as short as a half hour to almost a full 2 hours long. And let me tell you, just between the 3 campaigns that we did, John Rambo and myself, when we did our co-op, it was about 16 and a half hours, okay? Very long. And I will say, some of these missions, for example, this isn't really a major spoiler, but the first chapter of Leon sees him at a college campus overrun by zombies. It shows him going through the campus, finding a way off campus, fighting his way through the city, driving through the city, going into the sewers, then going into the subway, coming back up on top, finding survivors in the city, and then finally escaping the city after all that going on. So it's really freaking, complicated and long and drawn out. It almost feels like you're playing a game in itself in a lot of these chapters. So there's a lot of content there. Once you beat all 3 of the campaigns completely, you unlock a 4th campaign that is Ada Wong, which is also another 5 chapters. That one's just about under 4 hours. So you're talking roughly, for a first run through of the entire game, about 20 hours of gameplay. Now keep in mind, there are collectibles as well. There are these hidden items that are like blue symbols with snakes on them that you find hidden throughout the game, and as you get those, you shoot them, and they unlock supplemental info files that definitely add to the plot of the game. In fact, I'll be honest, there were a couple things that happened in the game that I was a little confused about. There's one character in particular that I thought that she was the daughter of somebody, but then when I read the supplemental files, it actually explained, oh no, she's just a scientist that worked for the guy. So those supplemental files are actually interesting enough that it's worth it to go through the game and find them all and read them so you fully understand the plot and what's going on. That being said, yeah, the plot of the game can be a little bit confusing until you beat Ada Wong's storyline, which actually fills in a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff that's been going on during the main 3 campaigns, and actually fills in a lot of the gaps. By the time that I beat Ada Wong's story mode, I felt satisfied. I said, now I fully understand what happened in this game, and there really are no plot holes, and it really was entertaining and fun for me to play through the whole game. So now let's talk about what I think are good things about the game, things that are really gaps in the game. But before we do that, I want to talk about the online modes just to get it out of the way. Because there's two online modes in this game. There's Mercenaries mode, which unlocks once you, I believe you have to beat any chapter of the game fully. You unlock the Mercenaries mode. And then as you beat each campaign, you unlock a new Mercenaries map, okay? Mercenaries mode has not really changed over the years. All it really is, you jump online with a co-op partner, or you can choose to play by yourself, and you're running around a small map that will populate itself with monsters, whether it's zombies or the Juavo, which is the name for the new mutated zombies in this game. And your goal is to, number one, find hourglasses to increase the amount of time, because you're on a timer. When the timer runs out, the game ends. Number two, to just survive. You cannot die. If you die, the game's over. And number three, to kill zombies in a combo fashion, meaning you have to kill zombies back to back to back, and a combo meter will rack up, okay? The combo meter gives you extra points, and extra points are going to accumulate and give you a high score, okay? Now, during the course of doing this gameplay, you're going to find ammo hidden around, you're going to find healing items hidden around. You can do co-op gameplay where you can revive each other if you get downed. And really, the main goal here is that you can unlock skill points. As you kill them with zombies, they drop skill point items, and so it accumulates to your skill points that you can then use to go buy skills in the campaign and make the campaign gameplay even easier for yourself. Not very complex, not really much going on there. I played it only on one map because unfortunately the person who I played it with, the Area Lord, hadn't beaten any of the campaigns yet, so he hadn't unlocked any additional maps. But the one default map was okay. It was like a city street in China with an overpass, and you're fighting humanoid zombies, and the tougher humanoid zombies come out. And okay, it's alright. It's just like, it's been there in other Resident Evil games before. It's not that big of a deal, and they didn't really add anything to it. It's just kind of the same old thing. So, for me, it was just kind of a, it's there because it's been there before. It wasn't like they put any extra effort into this mode for this this release. And then there's a new mode called Agent Hunt mode that you unlock once you beat, I believe, any story campaign. And what Agent Hunt mode is if someone is playing the campaign online and they made it a public match, you have the ability to join their game during their gameplay, okay? If you're actually joining other people who are the humans, you join as a monster, and you can control these monsters, and your goal is to try to down these people and kill these people. So it's good for a good maybe 20 minutes, and you get to play as all the monsters. You get to play as the flying unique monster in the game, the monster that is the morpher that doesn't die, and his body, each body part is controlled separately and can attack. You can be a regular zombie, you could be one of the zombies that morph into one of the special zombies like the Bloodshot. You could be a variety of monsters in the game when you're doing this game mode. But ultimately, the game mode falls flat on its face for a couple reasons. Number one, the controls are awful. For most of these zombies, the controls are very difficult. There's no way to really target what you're attacking, and so you might have like a lunge or a grab attack, and 9 times out of 10 when you go to do it, you're going to just miss who you're going for, and then they kill you because you're a weak zombie. They can kill you almost instantly, okay? And number two, there's really no incentive to play the mode. You don't actually get anything for playing Agent Hunt mode. There's no skill points that you accumulate. So why are you playing the mode if there's no real outcome besides, wow, I downed someone, haha, I'm a trollish asshole. You really don't get anything out of it. In addition, you can't matchmake this with your friends at all. You can't say join your friend's game and try to troll him as a zombie. There's no way to do it. It's completely random. So, unfortunately, it sucks because all you're doing is just some random stranger's game. You try to kill him. Oh, I failed or I won. Doesn't really matter. On to another scenario, or you quit. And that's it. There's nothing to it. There are perks that you can buy similar to the campaign that I told you about with skill points. But who cares? Why would you even spend it on it when, again, there's no reason to play this mode? One other thing that I do want to mention with Mercenaries mode, the matchmaking sucks ass. If you're not playing it with a friend co-op, and you try to just join a random person's game, it's almost impossible because all it does is brings you to a list of open matches, and every time I tried to click on one, it said the match was full, which then brought you back to the matchmaking menu, and you had to start the whole process over again. So I sat there for 20 minutes trying to join a game, so I said, fuck this, I'm just going to see if someone else is available who I know to play it, and luckily they were. So in my honest opinion, the matchmaking, the online modes are complete throwaways. There's really no reason to even ever play them, okay? So let's talk about what I like about the campaign of the game, what I dislike about the campaign of the game. Then we'll talk a little bit about what I think the difference is between playing the game multiplayer or single player, okay? So, what do I like about the game? I like the fact that the production values are fucking sky high, okay? People said this in their reviews already. They said it feels like you're playing an interactive Michael Bay movie. What's wrong with that? Like, I can understand that people are upset that it doesn't play like the original Resident Evil, okay? It's nothing like the original Resident Evil games. But guess what? Resident Evil hasn't played like the original Resident Evil game since Resident Evil 4. That was what, 6 years ago? Something like that? Like, you had 6 years to fucking accept the fact that Resident Evil is not going back to the survival horror formula. The plot has now gone to a place where the world is being infected with hundreds and thousands of monsters and creatures. You can't do typical survival horror with it anymore. It's not coming back. Give up. If you really want to play those classic survival horror games, no one confiscated your copy of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. You can still go play those games if you want. And yeah, there is actually a massive movement right now for Capcom to remake those games in HD. It might happen. Knowing Capcom's track record, they probably will do it to make an extra dime with minimum effort. So don't worry about it. Those games, you'll be able to play them again. But this series is not going to be survival horror anymore. So to see people complain that it's changed to an action-based, large explosions, large set pieces, big giant boss fights, crazy cooperative gameplay, and complain about that, your opinion basically is fucking invalid because you're not seeing it from a objective standpoint. And when you review a game, you're supposed to review it objectively and say, compared to all the other games that are out there this year, how does this game stack up? Bottom line is, this game is pretty good, and we're going to talk about some of the points why. So for you to just say, oh, I'm comparing it to the older versions of the game and that's why it's bad, your review is completely invalid, you're an unprofessional idiot, and you shouldn't get paid for your work. So yes, that person from GameSpot who reviewed Resident Evil 6 should be fired because they didn't do their job. That is the most irresponsible review I've ever read in my life, when most of the review is, it doesn't play like the original Resident Evil, it's viewed too much from the original formula, and therefore it sucks. No! You have to give valid reasons, okay? So, let's talk about valid reasons why I think the game is great and why I think the game does fall a little short. Again, I was saying the production values, huge, amazing. The story, really interesting, fun. It's a thriller mystery. You don't know what's going on till the very end when you finally beat it with Ada and everything's finally revealed. And you're like, ah, okay, that's cool. I hung in there for 20 hours and now I know everything that's going on. It was really interesting. The gameplay is good. The gameplay is actually excellent. It's easy to aim and fire. Every once in a while, sure, there might be a faster moving enemy, but there's even quick fire now where you just shoot from the hip for quick moving enemies. So there really is there's no valid complaint about the control, okay? The controls work, they're very responsive. They refined them now to the point where you can dodge, you can move around like in other games. They're not clunky tank controls. So no, the controls are excellent. I don't care what anyone else says. I had a blast playing this game with the controls, okay? The fact that the plot lines cross over is awesome. That's cool to see these different characters interacting at certain points. And the game actually has this unique feature where if you're playing the game online, you can actually play with other people at certain points. So what I mean is, for example, let's say that Leon and Helena are in a chapter where all of a sudden they're running into Jake and Sherry. If that is happening, then during that fight, you may randomly matchmake with two people who are also playing, and you'll have 4 real humans participating in that boss fight. That's unprecedented. Something like that has never happened in the campaign of a game before. That's a first, and it's awesome, and it works well. It seems like you always seem to be able to find somebody. There were a couple exceptions, but for the most part, I was able to find people. Similarly with Ada Wong. Ada Wong is an enigmatic character. No one really knows what her intentions are, and you see her several times during the course of these 3 campaigns. Well, when you finally play as Ada Wong in her 4th unlockable campaign, when you interact with those characters, you can actually interact with real humans. So I actually participated in several of the boss fights of the game, again, from Ada Wong's perspective, which is a hell of a lot of fun, okay? Really unique that they did that, really interesting. I really just don't know what else to say positively about the game besides it's great. It's fun, it's an experience, you feel like you're participating in a really large-scale interactive top-grade professional movie, and it's just fun as hell, and that's the bottom line. I know a lot of people say, again, it's not survival horror. It's not anymore. The series hasn't been survival horror for 6+ years. Get over it, okay? Or don't play the game. Go play the classics and leave people alone who want to move forward into the modern era, okay? What I want to say, though, is that, yeah, I played the game cooperatively, okay? So now let's talk a little bit about playing the game single player. Because like I said, my girlfriend Panda Lee played the game single player. She's run into a lot of problems. So let's explain. First of all, in single player mode, sometimes the AI of your teammate is just fucking stupid. For example, there's a scene where there's a race to kill a bunch of zombies and then someone opens the door behind you. So she killed all the zombies and then they said, okay, come in, but it's a door that you need both people to walk up to in order to open the door. She's there waiting, calling to her partner, come on, come on. Her AI partner refused to stop fighting zombies. He just kept fighting. He wouldn't run. So she's standing there by herself. What the fuck? She doesn't want to go back and kill zombies. She doesn't have to kill and waste ammo, but the AI was bad. In addition, apparently sometimes the AI just won't revive you. You'll be calling help, help, and they won't revive you. Instead, they'll continue to fight zombies, which is stupid. Okay, that's just dumb. Unfortunately, Panda Lee found a critical game bug, and I want to talk to everyone about it if you're going to play the game single player. If you're going to play the game single player, it is strongly recommended that when you're playing through a campaign, you do not switch characters during chapters. So for example, if you're playing as Leon in Chapter 1 of his campaign, don't switch over to Helena in Chapter 2 and then switch back to Leon in Chapter 3. Here's what she discovered. Apparently, the game has a problem where if your AI partner might not find a gun. So she finds the shotgun as Leon, but Helena never picks it up. Then in the next chapter, she's Helena. She doesn't have the shotgun, but the only ammo that's spawning is shotgun ammo. So the game assumes that she has it, but the AI partner never picked up the gun. And that's a major problem. Why is the game allowing you to progress without having all the guns that are critical? If that's going to be all the ammo that spawns later in the game, why the hell didn't the game have the AI partner pick up that particular weapon? She says this has happened twice so far in her campaign, where she's literally had no ammo and has to rely on her AI partner to do an entire boss fight because the only ammo spawning is a weapon she doesn't have because the AI didn't pick it up when the AI was controlling that character the chapter before. That's a big fucking problem, okay? There's no excuse for that. Capcom should have known that. They should have tested the game and figured that out. Is it to be assumed that maybe most people will probably play every chapter as one character, then go back and replay it as the other? Yes, probably. In fact, as I told you, there are those snake collectibles. There are certain ones that only certain characters can pick up. And so you're going to have incentive to go back and replay every stage as the other character. But you shouldn't have the option to switch on the fly if the game is going to have a bug like that. So a little disappointing to hear that the game has those kind of problems in the single player campaign, okay? The one other thing that is kind of confusing to me is that the game's chapters, let me take a sip. The game's chapters don't necessarily all take place at the same time. So because you're playing Chapter 3 with Chris doesn't mean that if you play Chapter 3 with Leon that these are taking place at the same time. Chapter 3 with Chris might take place at the same time as Chapter 4 with Leon, okay? And so what ends up happening is if you just play straight through one campaign, you may be a little confused as to some of the things that were going on, because sometimes these characters intersect. Maybe you don't know particularly what's happening in a certain situation. And even if you play all 3 campaigns through from start to finish, it may be confusing. Actually, what there is online, you can find this, there is a recommended order for you to play the chapters during the 3 story campaigns. And this is the order that John Rambo and I actually used when we played Resident Evil 6. The story made complete sense by the end, with of course there were a few things that left to be answered, which were answered by the Ada Wong campaign. But I can see for some people, if they're playing through the game, they don't know there's an order that makes more sense. You may get super fucking confused at what's going on. Because you might be way ahead in the story with this guy, but then you go to play with this guy and it goes back to the beginning of the story, and then there's people intersecting, but you're only seeing it from one perspective and not the other, and one perspective explained it more than the other, so you might just be like, ooh, clusterfuck in your head. I think Capcom did good by giving you the option to play whatever you want in any order, because if they didn't, people might complain, oh, the game's too linear. But at the same time, What they should have done is had a recommended order released in the game. Say, this is the recommended order you should play the chapters for it to make more sense. They didn't do that. And so I do recommend for anyone who's playing this game, go online, find the recommended chapter order, and play it in that order. It'll make a hell of a lot more sense, okay? And one other thing, sometimes the camera does get a little bit clunky. I do admit that. Sometimes you'll be stuck in a corner or whatever, and you're like, oh shit. And the last thing is there are surprise! Sorry, this is what happens. My camera has a 30-minute time limit, and I knew I was going to go long on this review. So, as I was saying, this game, more than any other Resident Evil game ever, has a ridiculous amount of QuickTime events. Now, there are a couple things that I can help you out here, okay? First of all, most of the QuickTime events are going to be simple button pushes, such as mash A, okay? Some of them will be press X and A together. Okay? Some of them will be press B to do like a co-op QuickTime event. If there's something that involves both characters, usually it's the B button. Some of them will be like press right trigger or left trigger. Okay? And the most difficult one out of all of them is just to rotate the thumbstick in a certain direction. Okay? Super huge tip for everyone. The game doesn't tell you this, but you can use both thumbsticks at once. Okay? It makes those QuickTime events insanely easy compared to how hard they are just trying to do it with one thumb. Do use both thumbsticks when you do those QuickTime events. You will find yourself passing things way easier. I didn't know that at first, and it was really becoming hard to do those rotation QuickTime events until I started using both thumbsticks. Okay, so that's a huge tip for everyone out there who's still playing the game. These QuickTime events are pretty much trial and error, and what I mean is some of them are just so fucking fast, you're going to have problems doing them. You're going to die, and you're going to have to replay it over and over until you learn the sequence of the QuickTime event. Is it annoying that there's trial and error? It's basically what they call a beginner's trap. There's no way to know what's coming. You won't know when the QuickTime event is coming. It just comes out of nowhere. It might be even during a cutscene. You're like, oh shit! And you have to be on your guard or on ready to jump at a moment's notice at these QuickTime events. Okay? Is it annoying? Yes, until you get used to it. Once you get used to the fact that this is going to happen, it actually becomes a fun thing. Oh, I gotta be ready here, and then you get ready for it and you do it. The good news is this. I'd say probably for 95% of the QuickTime events, if you fail them and you die, Capcom did an excellent job of putting checkpoints in the system that are great. So you might die, okay, well, you just go back to the beginning of the QuickTime segment, and maybe you got to do another couple inputs again, but it's not like you have to replay 10 minutes of gameplay. In most cases, there are a couple cases where it was kind of cheap, where I died to something like that, and then I had to replay a segment, okay? So I want to say 95% of the time they do a good job. Maybe 5% it's a little bit annoying. But I get the feeling it's because it was something they wanted to put into the game, so you're not just sitting around the whole time, and you're not always running and gunning. The same reason they probably put in those snowmobile segments, those motorbike segments. There are a couple driving segments. There's a couple segments where it's an on-rails shooter. They did it to mix up the gameplay. I understand why they did it. And never does it feel out of place. It feels kind of fun to actually have this kind of mixing it up in the variety, okay? So, QuickTime events, I know some reviewers complained about them. Get used to them. They're in the game, and they're not that tough. They can be annoying, but like I said, because of a good checkpoint system, it's not super annoying that they're in the game. So, overall, what do I think about Resident Evil 6? First of all, I think that the online modes do not have any bearing whatsoever on this review because they kind of suck. There's really no reason to play them. There's no incentive to play them, besides maybe playing Mercenaries to unlock some skill points to help you out in the campaign, which I could see some people doing. But outside of that, they're pretty much throwaway modes. Okay, try them once, okay, bleh, I'm done with it. The campaign of the game is absolutely outstanding. They did a great job here with the plot, with the characters. John and I said this multiple times. We said, Capcom could have just made one campaign. They could have just done two. No, it really feels like with this game, they said, we're going to go all out on this one. We know that we need to get the support of the fans back, and what we're going to do is we're going to give them outstanding amount of content, a really cool interlacing story where you could possibly even randomly matchmake with other people and do it cooperatively, and we're going to just throw in everything but the kitchen sink, and then we're going to throw the kitchen sink in there too, and we're just going to blow their fucking faces off, okay? And that's really what it feels like when you play through this whole game. You're like, wow, big boss fight after big boss fight after. It's just insane, and the variety is great, the gameplay is good, it's a crazy action-packed, fun shooter game. So that being said, if you go into the game understanding what it is without any preconceived notions that it's going to be survival horror like Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, this game is fucking great. The cooperative gameplay only adds to the game, the overall experience of the game, and that's how I played it. I played the 3 main campaigns with co-op, and then I played the Ada Wong campaign myself. From my personal experience, one of my favorite games of the year by far. In fact, I'm going to go out and I'm going to say this, and keep in mind this is my personal score from my experience. I'm going to go on a little bit more and talk a little bit more about how I think other people might feel. If you play the game, the 3 campaigns cooperatively, if you play them in a proper order that the story makes sense, if you use the skills, the unlockable skill tree properly to get more items, to do the things that are going to be useful in your campaign, as I've recommended in this video, you're going to love this game. You're going to say, I don't care that it doesn't play like old Resident Evil. This has been a real slow year for games, and this is one of the best. It's got a lot of content. Like I said, 20 hours minimum just to get through the game once. If you don't go back to do replay, the replay as the other character to see their perspective on things, and to also try to find all the secret items. If you don't play online, keep in mind you could get a little bit extra out of the online play. So it's got a great amount of content for the price, okay? I really do feel like you're participating in an interactive, big-budget Hollywood explosion extravaganza, and that's what I want out of a game, okay? That's what I'm looking for. I had so much fun playing this game. Whatever happened to people, instead of saying, I want to play one specific kind of game, and that's all I'm looking for. Well, this series isn't that kind of game anymore, so fuck it, it's bad. Like, no. Okay, maybe it's not survival horror anymore. That doesn't mean the game is bad, okay? You gotta stop being a fucking fanboy, take off your narrow tunnel vision glasses, and say, compared to all the other games that came out this year, how does this game stack up? If you played it the way that I did with the co-op, the order, using the skills effectively, this game is a 9 out of 10. Yes, there are still some annoying flaws like trial and error, like every once in a while you do run out of ammo, but it's not a major problem. It's just only a very few times in the game that this happens, but it's a great fucking game. I think they did an outstanding job on this game. Now, let's talk about the other scenario. You're not going to play it like I did. You don't have a co-op partner to play the game with who you can rely on and to kind of, you know, have that buddy system kind of a feeling when you're playing. And so you're going to play the game by yourself, offline with an AI partner. Right there, I can tell you the game's quality dips significantly. An AI partner that doesn't always help you out, that doesn't always do what it's told, that stupidly gets into excessive fights with zombies when it doesn't need to, and you could be progressing to the next part of the game, okay? A glitched system where if you alternate characters through a campaign that you may or may not have all the weapons and you may be finding ammo for a weapon you don't have, basically rendering you completely useless, okay? That's bullshit. That should have never been in the game. Capcom should have known better, should have tested better, and should have taken that shit out. And I feel bad because I had such a blast with the game, and Panda Lee's, my girlfriend, is playing the game at the same time as me, and she's not having as good of a time. She's still enjoying the game, but she's not loving the game because she says, I have a lot of fun, and all of a sudden, I run into this part where I'm really fucking frustrated. I'm like, what the hell happened? Why is it doing this to me? So, that's disappointing that by playing the game by yourself, you are diminishing your experience. So, from all the things that she's told me, from her experiences with playing the game single player with an AI partner, I would say if you're playing this by yourself, the game's probably a 7.5, okay? Above average, but it has problems that significantly hinder the game's single player experience. So there, I've said it. This game is going to be a completely different score and experience depending on how you play it. If you play it the way that I really feel it was meant to be played, co-op during the co-op portions, then I think you're really going to enjoy the game a lot more. But if you're forced to play it single player because maybe you don't have Xbox Live Gold or you don't have, you don't have a dependable person to play through it with, you're not going to like the game as much. So I hope that out of all the things that I've said now kind of explains to you whether or not you should get the game. If you're going to play the game by yourself, it's still going to be an outstanding amount of content, and you're going to get a lot of hours of gameplay out of it, but you may be frustrated by some of the pitfalls that come with the AI partner and some of the bugs that happen in the game. So that being said, Resident Evil 6, one of my favorite games of the year. For me, it's a 9, but for those who aren't going to play it single, or are going to play it single player, you're probably going to feel it's like not as good of a game, and it's probably going to be around a 7.5. Okay? So that's it for my Hateful Truth game review on Resident Evil 6. I hope that I've cut through the mainstream media's complete and utter fucking bullshit to explain to you that this game, even if you play it single player, isn't a bad game. No, it's not a 45 out of a fucking 100. Just weighing the content of the game alone compared to all the other games this year, you can't rate this game a 45 if you're being professional and objective, which is not what that reviewer did. That reviewer was a complete subjective asshole, only wanted to see through their own tunnel vision that all I want to play is Resident Evil 1 and 2, and this game doesn't play like those, and because of that, gave it a shit score. Completely unprofessional. That person should never be relied upon to write a review again, and in fact, people should look up who that is, and whenever you see them review a game, close the page. Don't read it. Their score should be taken off of fucking Metacritic, because now it's dragging down this game score overall because of one fucking stupid asshole. Okay. Got it off my chest, finally. Okay. That's it for the Hateful Truth review on Resident Evil 6. I hope that it's definitely helped you to get a better picture overall of the game, of what it is, of whether or not you're going to like it. Keep in mind, again, my reviews are maximum truth and minimum bullshit based off of my experience, and now I actually have some unique input from someone playing the game single player. I'm able to bring you a cumulative, accurate review for the game, cutting through all the fucking stupid, subjective, preferential, elitist bullshit that this mainstream media has been trying to grade this game. I think it's great. Play it co-op. I'm just telling you right now, buy the game, play it co-op, enjoy one of the best games of this year, okay? I'm DSP. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I will see you next time on The Hateful Truth. Peace.